I'm here with Ben Badler, a writer at Baseball America, to talk about Samuel Basallo, one of the hottest stories in all of the Orioles organizations. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And let's get right into Basallo. I mean, this guy is red hot. Over his last 12 games, 6 homers, hitting nearly 500. What do you see out of this guy?
Yeah, every time we put out a new ranking, we keep pushing him higher and higher, and it doesn't seem like we're ever going to push him high enough because every time he just seems to keep getting better. Like you said, it's a really impressive combination of both hitting ability and power. You look at him, he's just an enormous young man. I guess he just turned 19 years old. There's gigantic power in there, and it's not like he's doing it with a swing where he has to sell out to try to generate that power, where it comes with a whole bunch of swing and miss either. It is an aggressive approach, but it's a really good mix of contact, power, and I think we haven't even seen him really fully tap into the full power upside that he has, which could be a 25, 30 plus home run type guy once he's in his prime.
Started the year in Single A, moved up through High A, now in Double A. Who can you compare him to in terms of a meteoric rise like this?
I mean, there just aren't that many 6'3" teenage catchers who have the ability to hit and hit with the kind of power that he can. It's hard to find a comparable player other than guys who maybe moved off the position. I think of like Joey Votto was a catcher coming up. Not that he's necessarily the same type of hitter. I mean, Votto has otherworldly patience and is going to end up in Cooperstown, so I'm not going to put that on him. But just the kind of guys who started their career behind the plate and ultimately gravitated toward first base or another position long term in their career because their hitting ability was just so good. So we'll obviously see what ultimately happens positionally with Basallo, but the bat just looks so special, whether it's going to be behind the plate or if it has to go to first base long term too.
You mentioned that the position is a little bit of a question mark. Of course, the Orioles have Adley Rutschman, so the future of that position seems like it might be locked up in Baltimore. Could you see this guy being an MLB first baseman?
Yeah, I think he has a chance to catch just like in a vacuum. He has outstanding arm strength. He is just so big, so I think there's going to be some questions long term about he's not getting any smaller, and there aren't that many catchers in the big leagues that size. And of course, when you have an Adley Rutschman behind the plate in Baltimore, that creates another obstacle. But the good news is that it seems like his bat is so good that if you have to put him at first base, then it seems like he has the upside to be not just a regular at first base, but a potential, above average plus everyday player at first base too.
And the Orioles have a bit of a streak in terms of number one prospects. Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, now Jackson Holliday. We saw Basallo jump from 100 to up to 46 now in the MLB Top 100. Do you think he could be the next number one?
I think he'll move up even higher in our next ranking. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a top 25 prospect in our preseason top 100 coming into the year. Number one might be tricky. There just aren't many guys who, again, he does catch, but if it long term is first base, that does create some more risk. I mean, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. obviously is the type of player where it's an exception. Although he was at third base, although really more recently long term kind of knew he was going to be a first baseman. So could he be a top 10, top 5 overall prospect in baseball? Yeah, I do think he has that kind of upside. Number one would surprise me, but either way, once you're talking about a top 25 or certainly a top 10 overall prospect in baseball, especially with the hitters where there's just so much less injury risk than pitchers, the track record of those guys going on to become really good big leaguers is excellent. Not because we're so smart or anything. It's just because those are the obvious guys who belong at the top of those lists and go on to have pretty good careers typically.
Of course, the Orioles farm system has plenty of stories, but why do you think Samuel Basallo kind of flew under the radar this year despite being so talented?
I think just a combination of how many other good players are in that organization. When you're starting the year, like you said, with Gunnar Henderson, number 1 overall, Jackson Holliday making as much noise as it is, Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, all these other players throughout their organization, Grayson Rodriguez, being one of the best pitching prospects in the game coming into the season. There's a lot of other talent in the organization, and Basallo hadn't taken that jump to dominate full season ball the way that he has now. So I think he was a prominent player, certainly a big international signing. So there were big expectations for him since then, but he's really just taken a big leap forward with the way he's been able to dominate this year in full season ball, and then just seems like he's getting better and better even as he's facing high A and double A pitching now.
And even for those who were following Basallo coming into this year, I think they were a little surprised to see him end up at Double A to end the season. Where do you think he could end up at the end of next year? Do you think he could get up to Triple A and maybe even the majors?
Yeah, I mean, if he's finishing the year in Double A, I mean, maybe part of that is just the way the season is staggered now. But I got to think the way he's hitting, he's going to start the year in Double A next year. And if you're starting the year in Double A, I mean, we see guys come up straight from Double A to the big leagues. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case with him. He's still going to be 19 years old to start next season. I mean, he'll be 20 by the end of it. But yeah, I mean, he could be a guy where I could see him being one of those players who makes his MLB debut at 20 years old, 21 at the latest by 2025, which is still going to be, the same age as a college junior. Again, the track record of players making their MLB debut at 21 years old is especially 20 years old is extremely impressive.
Well, the one thing we do know for sure is that the Orioles farm system is absolutely stacked. Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.